I'm going to go over using masking fluid. So here's one I've masked. I'm doing 2 of them this time. So we're going to mask off the halters. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention, when I traced, I did trace some of these little contour lines in here, and I just did a real light dot, 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 dot kind of thing instead of making a mark. And you can see I got fairly light results here. I don't think that they'll mess with the finished product. Okay, masking. Masking 101. I should have done this on a separate video, but here we are. So we have container. We have, this doesn't have to be Platinum Dawn, but you need dishwashing liquid. A nice big squirt. Okay, we're going to use a lot of dishwashing liquid here. So you can see, I think you can see, yeah. You can see that I put a lot in there. That's about enough water to go with it. I want it to be really concentrated. You got to stir it up. I'm stirring it up with my brush, which happens to be a synthetic brush. It's got a nice little point on it. Cheap. It's a cheap synthetic brush, but here's the thing. It's still a brush that has a nice point. It's not some scuffed up awful thing, because every line that you make with masking fluid is going to be, when you're through, it's going to show up. Treat this just like you were putting paint down, only be even more careful with it. I have some in this container because masking fluid gets old, and mine had gotten old, and I had to pour off what remained that was any good. Now, I like PBO drawing gum, P-E-B-E-O drawing gum, and you never need to thin it. It's very thin already, and you can do all kinds of very delicate lines depending on the brush you use. So I'm going to paint this on very carefully. I mean, treat this like it's an important part of the painting, because it is. A lot of people think just because they're going to pull it up later that it doesn't matter, and they do a sloppy job with it. No, not on this. You don't want to. Now, every 20 seconds or less, wash it out really well in your soap mixture and squeeze. So I gave that brush a really good squeeze so it's not hiding extra water in the body of the brush. That's really important, because you don't want to thin this out any more than it already is. All right, so here we go. The other thing about it is that it doesn't matter whether you put it on thick or thin. If it's there, it's there. I left something off right there in that drawing. This is a little buckle. Okay, let's wash the brush out. Squeeze it out. Wash it out. And I'm going to make a mistake down here. Oops, I got out of the line. Well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to try and wipe it up. Huge mistake to try and wipe it up. All you do is smear it down in the piece. So I'm going to continue to finish this, and then I'll get back to you and we'll talk about this. So like I said, it doesn't matter how thick or thin it is. If it's on, it does the job. When I put my brush in, I don't stick it all the way up to the ferrule. I only stick it about halfway in. You notice that I've changed directions. I've turned the work as I'm working so that I can really see what I'm doing. So I can see right along this edge as I'm working. Whoop. That wasn't so good. So I'm trying to do the best possible job I can. And then I'll turn it this way as I come down the other side. Again, so that I can, so that my hand's not in the way of the work, so I can see exactly where I am. Wash that brush out frequently, because this brush could last me like forever if I just treat it right. They try to sell you those throwaway brushes for this, assuming that you'll ruin it. But if you use the soap and you pay attention to what you're doing and you're using a synthetic brush, that's very important, you won't have a problem. So why not use a brush that will do what you need it to do? Okay, so you can see that I have that place that I messed up. So I waited for it to dry so that I can lift it completely and start over. Like I said, if you make a mistake, don't try to wipe it out. That's the worst thing you could do. Brush halfway in. I like a brush with a nice point. And I'll use different configurations of brushes. Sometimes I'll use one of those angle shaders. And if I was doing cat whiskers, I would use a real fine rigger. I've seen the most awful cat whiskers in the world because people didn't realize how much they were going to stand out, and there's just these big fat globby things that ruined their painting. Okay, so here we go. That part's done. You let it dry naturally. Do not use a hair dryer. It'll dry within a couple of minutes or even less. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at what we've got here. I've made a couple of changes since I last saw you a minute ago. I missed getting this little space right in here drawn in on mine. And I looked at my drawing and it's there, but it is such a thin line you might miss it. But it really changes the shape of the horse's head, so you really want it. And then here, here, and here, the little spaces between the horses, I went ahead and filled that out with masking fluid. Okay, so first thing we got to do is mix some colors. And when I look at this, and I guess I'm going to follow this, this horse is a little bit more golden than the young one. But, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to, you know, I look at this and I want to use Queen Gold. I just do. The thing is that Queen Gold could get just too bright. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix it and thin it down. My plan is to start out, and mind you, this is start out. It doesn't mean all the way through. But I'm going to start out with a triad. And the triad is going to be composed of Queen Burnt Scarlet. That's a more natural red, but it's still a quinacridone, which has a lot of good properties to it that I like. And I'm going to use Prussian Blue. Let's see, here it is. Getting quite a bit of color up here. Don't be chinchy with this. And then brush up really good and get into the Quinn Gold. So I'm working up quite a bit of color here, and I had pre-wet my colors they've been wet for maybe 30 minutes. So they're softened so I can get a lot of color up, which is what I need. So you don't want to start out with really weak color. And what we're going to do is we're going to pre-wet these horses to make it a little bit easier to do. So, okay, so I've got this color, and I'm going to modify my Quinn Gold. Let's just start out with little bits. Let's put a little bit of red into it. Well, that couldn't possibly be enough. Let's put a little more. You know, this is guesswork. You just get better at guessing after you've had practice. So I know that my blue is going to have a really strong effect on this, so I'm going to start out with small amounts. Oh. Well, let's see what that looks like. So what I need is a scrap. Let's get that on there a little stronger. I like that. Okay, it's close enough to suit me. And then we need a warm gray. That complicates things. Okay, so let's start out with our blue. It's a warm gray, but here I think that I need more blue than any of the other two colors. Let's put, oh, it doesn't matter which. Well, that's my gold is already mixed up. Oh, so now I have a really soft green here. Trying to get the extra color out of my brush so I don't waste any. Let's put enough red in that it is no longer. Oh, now that's a warm gray. That's kind of a brown. I think that's a little browner than I want. I don't know if this shows up well on the video. Let's put just a little bit more blue in there. Closer. I think the yellow is still too strong. A little bit more blue. This is kind of greeny. Okay, and then it's got kind of a greenish tint to it. I think I would like, well, that's really close. It's not greenish. Okay, I'm going to go with that. I was going to put a little more blue in it, but I won't. So the next thing we need is clean water. Okay. You know, this almost looks a little far away. I can't figure that out. Oh well. So here's the thing. I'm going to do one horse at a time because it's a little much to keep up with everything that we're going to do here. And we've got a white blaze here on the forehead, and a little bit of a white blaze over here. Let's see. Let's do this. Let's arrange this like this. So, let's start out by pre-wetting the horse. And remember, we don't want to pre-wet the tongue. So I'm just getting it liberally wet. I'm going to get it wet up here past the edges of the mane. Up above it. Same thing, I'll get it wet a little bit out this way. And the young one's ear is here up against the mother's face. I'm going to conclude it with the mother's face for now, for this first time out, because it's dark and it blends in a lot. So we're going over the blaze and over the eye. And then down here, I want to be sure I remember not to get water on the tongue. And, you know, I'm being a little sloppy about the edges. I'm not getting quite all the way up to the edges. Hope that shows. Okay, so, you know, I could look at it this way. See, did I get it all wet, and is it wet enough? I want it on the soupy side, but I don't want too much. You know, we've been through how to see if it's wet enough. All right, so here's my color. See if that shows. So let's start putting a little color in. And this is fairly strong paint because it's going into wet paint. I mean, on wet paper. You see, this is why we masked, because I want continuous strokes like that. Not that particular stroke, but... And the ears have got a lot of black in them. Let's just do this. Oh, well, you know what? This ear, it's got quite a bit of brown. Let's go put a bunch of brown in there. Okay, coming down this way. And I think I'll go ahead and put a dab of this gray in this area a little bit. A little bit down here. Okay. And of course that's all running everywhere. Well, we know how to do that. We're going to do the water neutral brush, and we'll just control it a little bit. There, coming along. See this long stretch of dark here? Of course, we're not really getting that dark yet. We're practicing for when we get that dark. So there's a lot of this golden color coming down. Comes on down over the front part of the muzzle like that. Actually, I think it comes down here. Okay. So see, this is nice and soft and fuzzy up there. That's what I want. In fact, I'm going to take my water neutral brush and make sure that this edge that comes out past the mane is nice and fuzzy. Maybe I'll blot a little bit. Something like that. And then let's use this. And we'll start putting some color in here. Now hopefully you got the dots on that muzzle dark enough that you'll be able to find them, hopefully, when this is dry. You know, I might just put a streak or two more of... Oh, look what I did. I forgot about the blaze on the forehead. Oh. Let's pull that up. Blot it a little bit. Add a little bit of water in there. I wanted soft edges on it, but I didn't want them that soft. There we go. Now I'm going to have to watch that for a while. And I'm going to put a little water back into it. And here's my 1/2 inch brush. Let's get a little bit of... Go right down here.
Hey, this is
Okay, hold on just a minute. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Okay, so now we're going to do the little guy. And I think I'm just going to add a tiny bit of red and just a smidgen of blue to my mix. I don't know if that's enough. Maybe there. So we ought to look at that and see. Okay, here's the old swatch. Here's the new one. Of course, this one's wet, but it is a little bit redder. I think it'll do. I think it'll do. Okay, so I was using a 1-inch brush on the mare, but I'm going to go down to a 3/4 inch on the coat. And I dried the mare right along here so that I wouldn't get any bad accidents there. So same thing on this beginning area. I want to run out past the edge of the what I've got drawn there, where the mane is, you know, into the background. We want something that softens the transition there a little bit. So I could tilt it sideways and see. And you know, this water, this masking acts as sort of a dam, so you can get one area that's flooded and another area that's a little too dry, so kind of watch that. So I got this one really wet, and I'm going to maybe pull up just a little bit of the water. So what I'm doing here is I'm not really squeezing it out really good, just a little bit to go over this. I need plenty of water there, but I don't want him or her to be too soupy. Okay, so here we go. You know, I might just paint a little color onto that ear while I'm at it. That was just a spur of the moment thought. Was it a good thought? Well, it didn't hurt anything. And, oh, I painted over the blaze again, didn't I? Oh well. So let's come down here and let's look. This coat has a little bit more of a light area right there. You notice I put tape top and bottom. Explain that in a minute. So now into our gray mixture. This is just a beginning, you know, the undercolor. So far I don't have any light areas on this one. This baby is in a lot of shadow. And mostly we're going to put that on later, but I might tone some of the color down a little bit more right now. So let's go and get a little bit more darks along here on the ear. They've both got dark manes, and then their ears have kind of got a, you know, a little bit of black and some brown, both. Okay, let's put a little dark area here around the eye and there. Now I don't want to do too much of that because it's just going to push the other color out of the way. So now let's regain our light spots. There's a swirl right up here. I didn't do much of that on my drawing. Oh no, it's up here. Oh, okay. Well, let's put a little color back in there. You know what? I made the swirl backwards. Oh well. And then let's squeeze it out. Let's suck up a little color right along here. That's about right. A tiny bit of water back in there. You know, just like we've been doing with a lot of things lately. See, now we've got some basic areas laid in with some nice soft transitions. I really would like to fix that glaze. It's going to bother everybody that's backwards when they keep watching me work. And this is about right. See, we have a little bit of color coming on down here to the muzzle that's brown. And this area on the side is a little bit lighter. Yeah, she's lighter on the side with a brown here on the muzzle. That's very similar markings. Squeeze that out, pull a little bit more of it up. That's nice right there. And then let's add just a tiny bit of water back in to hold the place. Just keep working with it while it's drying. Or if you're at home, it'd be real convenient for you just to go to the hairdryer and dry it real fast. And then you wouldn't have to worry about this creeping back in. I want a little less color right there. Let's pull a little more of that up. There we go. There's a tiny bit more dark right here. Of course, I could put that in on the next layer. Don't feel like you have to get everything right here exactly. Don't even try. You're building up layers for many reasons. Okay. There we go. Okay, that's the beginning. One more thing. Let's soften these edges. I forgot all about them. See how easy it is to get lost? I've even got a little bit of a line there, but it's not going to hurt anything. I could get it out later if it's a problem, but I don't even think it's a problem. Soften that edge a little bit while we're at it. We're going to have fun with these mains later, I hope. Okay, there. Okay, here we are. So, I've got my photo here, and I've got my horse. I'm going to look at the horse's cheek right here. Does both of those show? Yeah, barely. Okay. And you can see that cheek color here is much richer and deeper than it is here. Let's look at some highlights. Let's look at that highlight right there. And this area is a little darker anyway there. Oh, look, that's pretty close. So what that tells me is that my base that I have down here is going to be good when I leave it untouched in some places to make highlights. And then I'm going to then pull in deeper, richer shadow in a lot of other places. Before I do that, I think we'll address both painting the tongue here, but also I want to get some of the darks started, because as we do stronger washes, some of these lines can get lost, And hopefully your lines are not like super dark here, because that's going to make a mechanical edge. Oh, so, okay, let's start with the tongue. Let's start with some color here. So once again, we'll take some of our color and mute it. So this time we'll take the red. You know, I use this combination of colors an awful lot of the time. We don't really need much there. Well, that tongue is way too bright. So, oh, we have a mixture of everything, right? Well, no, I don't want to use that up. Let's see. So I'll put a little bit of blue in this. Oh. Well, amazingly, that's about the right color. I thought I was going to need some yellow. I don't need any yellow. Okay, remember that Queen Burnt Scarlet has a lot of yellow to it. So, okay, so let's look at the shapes here on this tongue. You could see the tongue almost looks white in some areas. We don't really want to go that light. So, let's just water this down, and we'll make a, you know, that's going to be our highlighted areas. Oh, does that look too dark? Yeah, maybe I'll pull a little bit of that up. There. Okay. That should be pretty nice right there. That's our beginning tongue. Okay, and I'm going to keep the tongue color right here. And then, well, I need to look at this. So, these nostrils are really complicated. And you're really looking at the inside of the nostril here. And you're looking at several shades of depth, because this gray in this area, I don't know if you can see on the video, but if you study your photo real closely, you'll see this area of gray is not as dark as that area back in there. And then, so we have several shades of gray in here. And although this edge looks pretty crisp, it's really not. It's really got a pretty softened edge there. So what we're going to do first, this is our, you know, this is our color that we put on the muzzle and the mane and stuff. And you want to have plenty of that mixed up so that you'll have enough for what we're going to be doing. Actually, I don't have enough here. But you see, again, we've got this area where we've got dried paint, which is really, really nice because you can just pick up small amounts when you want it. I don't want small amount here, but I'm going to start. I'm just going to fill in a dark. Let's see, this comes to right about there. I've got a line to go to, but this is so confusing. I want to make sure that I'm seeing it correctly. So I'm really taking my time. You could also take your pencil and lightly draw the line there. That is the dark area in there. And then I think I'll just pull a little color down this way. That's sort of a beginning on that. I'm going to leave that alone now for now, and let's do just some other little tweaky areas. So there's this little area right here. Now what we don't want to do is draw a line all the way down to the mouth. It'll start looking like one of those smiley face things if we're not careful. But what we will do, even though you see a steady line there, it gets a lot weaker in some areas. So what we're going to do is we're going to water our color down. So we got a pretty thin gray there. And then we're going to skip an area entirely and come down here with a lighter gray. And do maybe that. I think I got it a little misshapen there. I think that's not quite dark enough. We're going to have a little bit more than that. Okay, that's a nice start on that. Now, while I'm at it, see, I don't have, I mean, this whole area is going to get darker, but I'm just working on some of the darkest dark shadows right now. This is partly me finding my way. And remember, these, the features are like, they're like the important parts on a map. So it kind of helps you keep track of where you are. Now I'm going to soften this edge a little bit. Doesn't have to be real soft because we're going to be adding a lot more color in a lot more places here. I'm going to let that dry. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to work on the eye. Let's see if I can set that right there. Again, we're not looking to finish the eye, but we're looking to make some landmarks so that we can find our way around. I see a little dark shadow right there. There's the eyelid, and then there's this area up here, which actually I don't have on my, well, I do sort of have it on my trace out for you, but not entirely. So let's do that. I'll put a little bit of something in here, and let's, for the pupil, and let's soften the edge on it. Again, that's just more to make it look more like an eye while we're working on it. In fact, I'll just soften all those edges there. Let's see. And then there's a tear duct. And if you, I don't have it drawn in here, but you can see it now. I can see it on the photo. It's a little darker right there. I think that's enough for now. Okay. Now let's look at the baby. The baby. Let's see. Go see a shape like this. This isn't drawn in detail again on your drawing. I'm painting shapes within the shapes that are on your drawing. Oh, that looks pretty good. His mouth is not going to stand out much at all. In fact, that line that I've got here is probably enough to do it by itself. Now the eye, there's a shadow around the eye, but the eye area itself is relatively small. There's a tear duct here because this head is foreshortened by quite a lot. I can't really tell quite what goes on with the eye here. And there is something here. There's an eyelid up here. I don't know. None of that quite makes sense to me. I'm just going to pull that in as dark. Because there's not a lot of detail there to tell what's going on. And so you don't need to paint more detail than is in there. So we've got a dark area here. We also have a little bit of a highlight. But this amount of color that I'm putting in is already about the color of the highlight. The value of the highlight. So we'll leave that here. And, ooh, look what I didn't draw in the picture. I didn't draw this little thing hanging down, which I really think, well, should we put it in there or leave it off? Maybe I'll just leave it off. What else do we need that's important here? He's got a little dark spot right here. I'll put a little of that in, a little mane in. just because I'm fiddling, I think. Okay, so really what has to happen next is we have to get this dry. I'm stalling, but I'm going to dry it. Those look a little like horses, don't they? Okay, good. So now let's put in a little bit richer shape in a few places. So we've still got our horse color mixture here. Maybe we should do the little guy first, because this mixture was modified for the little guy. If you look right here, you can see kind of a shadow, and the shadow is pretty much the color of the horse. We might have to add a little bit of gray into it. Oh yeah, I think we will. Let's put that in. And it comes down this way. So you got to carry it on the other side of the bridle. So let's soften. And we'll go ahead and put a little more color on that ear. That ear's going to be pretty dark at some point. And there's a little bit of shadow right up here, or darker color. I don't know if it's darker color or shadow or both. Right up here. I'll tell you what, let's soften the edges of what we're doing. There. Okay, how about, see this shape right here? There's sort of a highlight, and then there's this, and you could draw it if you wanted. I've got a little bit of an indication of that. Pull down below the halter. Halter, it's not a bridle, it's a halter. Is there any connection between the words bride and bridle? I just bet there is. Okay, so there, I've got that color down, and I'm going to make a water neutral brush. See a little mark right there. You know, that could get a little darker. Let's soften this. And that really isn't a soft edge on this at all. Let's work to make that edge a little better. I want to keep that soft for now while I'm figuring it out. And that's what I'm doing. Primarily, I'm figuring it out. Got a shape kind of like that, and then we need a little bit of the gray. So I'm going in here and I'm getting a little of the gray, and whoa, it's a little dark. A little darker than I wanted it. Definitely. Okay, let's soften some edges. And probably pull up a little color while we're at it. Boy, that soaked that up. That was fast. Well, that's not out of line with what's there. It doesn't please me, but I think it's going to be okay. So I'm going to pick up the tiniest bit of his body color, we'll call it, and pull down a little bit more right here. And then we'll add a little bit more dark down here, across this way. There's almost like a dark spot right here. And then everything gets dark over this way. So maybe we'll soften this edge right along here. And then the rest of this, we're just going to go ahead and paint. I'm on dry paper. We're just going ahead and painting a shade darker than he was. This brush is almost too small for that. Okay. A little more color in here. No, that's not the color that's in there, but when we put the gray on top of it, it'll be richer. So make a nice rich dark. Okay. So something like that. I'm kind of trying to lift a little bit right here, just barely lift. Okay, that's a start on the little guy. I think I'm going to stop this video at this point because I've been making them too long and it's causing more problems with trying to get them to work on the somewhere in cyberspace. I'm fixing to be on my own doing this, and I still don't know what I'm doing. Okay. I shouldn't have done that in front of you. You should dry it before you do that. Okay, we're stopping right there for the day.